Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's Jordan Leandry, and welcome back to the Two Man Advantage podcast. I'm Jordan Leandry, joined as always by Dylan Kapiski. Dylan, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Really pumped for the series that's coming up right now, but that's not what we're here to talk about today, is it?
No, it isn't, and we're already plugging the next podcast like we do every single time we do the first one of the
Yeah,
day.
you gotta keep them wanting more.
Yeah, cliffhanger.
Yeah, so today we are talking about the recent series that the Red Sox had at home against the Phillies, a short series, just 2 games. They managed to split against the Phillies, and game one was a battle of two pitchers, one who's used to be a dominant arm all over the league, but has struggled a bit in the last couple years, taking on a guy who this year has just posted ridiculous numbers in the National League. The pitching matchup that I'm referring to, David Price versus Aaron Nola. This was game one. A great start for both guys.
Yeah, they were both dominant. Price got off a little bit shaky. I mean, he gave up the run in the second inning, and then in the third, he had to get out of a jam in a really weird way. The double play that they turned, it was like 5-2 to 6-5, I think was the double play.
Yeah, the,
Yeah, it
the
was
double pickle
crazy.
double play.
Yeah, and I mean, when you think about it, like that was a very intelligent play by not only Nunez to get the run down instead of just throwing home like most guys would.
Yeah.
Um, the throw by Leone back to Bogarts and he tagged Herrera before just continuing the rundown. So then they got Herrera out at third, and then it was just a rundown again, and they doubled him up. So that was pretty amazing. But Price settled in after that. He wound up going 8 innings, 5 strikeouts, just the one run he allowed in the second. And I think we both agreed last time when we previewed the series that we thought David Price was going to come out and he was going to pitch very well. I didn't expect 8 innings of one-run ball, but it definitely should make you feel a little bit more comfortable with him after the fact that every single game this year he's pitched against a good team has been either average or terrible. So the fact that he was able to beat a division-leading team and in the fashion he did it is pretty impressive. Even though he got the no decision, but he still pitched well enough for the win.
And I know that he's coming off a start where, well,
It
he's
didn't
coming
exist.
immediately off a start that didn't count, but his last official start, he went 6 and a third and didn't give up any runs. That was the Detroit game, but I felt like this was his best start in a long time, might even be for the whole year.
Yeah, at least since April, because I remember after his first couple of starts, he still hadn't allowed an earned run to begin the year. But I mean, those were against like Tampa and Baltimore. So I mean, but yeah, I mean, especially when you factor in the fact that he beat up on a division leading team in the Phillies, even though they're a young team, they're still very exciting to watch. They still got very good talent, and he was going up against their ace in Aaron Nola. I mean, it was a pitcher's duel, and you wanted to make sure, or you needed to see him not blink first, and he didn't, which was great for the Red Sox. And even though it took 13 and Price was done after 8, it still was great to see him come through and have a big game, especially now that Sale's on the disabled list.
Yeah, Nola, to his credit, what a game he pitched. His first 2 innings, he went back-to-back innings where it was just 10 pitches. 10 pitches in the first, 10 pitches in the second, and for a while it looked like he was going to get 10 pitches in the third, but Sox ended up getting to him a little bit. Uh, they wouldn't get to him on the board, though, until Eduardo Nunez hit a triple. It's been a lot of triples, especially from the Red Sox in the last few games. It's quite interesting. Um, but he hit a triple that drove in Jackie Bradley to tie the game and complete the scoring for much of the rest of the game. It would end up, like you said, going 13. And one of the points that we've been talking about quite a bit since this podcast started, was it less than a week ago? But already a common theme has been just how awful the Sox bullpen has been. But man, they came up big when they had to in this game. It started with Thornburg coming in the ninth because it was still tied at 1. He shut them down. He gave up a hit, but no runs. His ERA dropped to a 5.19, which is a promising sight after his first couple of outings weren't so great. Brazier came in, and despite giving up 2 walks, he was able to close the inning. Heath Hembry had 2 strikeouts in a clean inning, a very rare sight from him.
Yeah, shocking. Very shocking.
Joe Kelly, who we are known to be very, very critical of, he came in and only gave up one walk in an inning. And then Velasquez got credited with the win as he came on in the 13th to shut down the Phillies and allow the Red Sox to come to bat to pick up the win. So, from your perspective, how impressed were you with the bullpen's performance in this game, considering how much of a load they had to carry?
I mean, it's very impressive considering some of the names that you mentioned. Like, didn't hear Matt Barnes, didn't hear Craig Kimbrell, and they still were able to get a win in extra innings. I mean, you think of putting in Heath Hembry for an inning, he goes out there, you're like, oh, this is going to be a catastrophe. And then Kelly, same thing. And even Velasquez, and I know he's been good out in the bullpen, but you'd think he's going out there in the 13th inning. I don't really know if he's going to be effective enough to, even pitch a scoreless inning, let alone wind up coming out with a win. But, I mean, they all did, so I was very impressed. I'm still not convinced that they can do that on a consistent basis, but that I was definitely impressed that they were able to back up Price and basically pick him up and be like, you pitched, you did your job tonight, we're going to do ours, and we're going to make sure that we walk out of here with a W.
Yeah, it is a shame that Price gets a no decision in this despite pitching a fantastic game, but that just speaks, for once this isn't a case of the offense going cold like we saw in the last series with the Sale start. This was just Price playing the way that we pay him to play, and Aaron Nola just dominating the Red Sox. Like this wasn't really a surprise that they weren't able to put together a bunch of runs.
Right. This isn't a case where they're facing a bad pitcher or a guy that's not supposed to be a dominant force against them, and they just couldn't score. This was against Aaron Nola, who's a Cy Young candidate. I doubt he'll win it because of how ridiculous Jacob deGrom has been, even though he's still under 500 for the season, despite his sub-2 ERA. But Aaron Nola's in the Cy Young race, so you don't have to panic when you see the Red Sox not score against him because he's an elite arm. All you care about is winding up winning, and that's exactly what they did, thanks to my boy Blake Swihart, who has been absolutely tearing the cover off the ball since Vasquez got hurt. And I believe his hitting streak after the second game of the series is up to, it's either 11 or 12 now, but he's been hitting
11.
It's 11. He's been hitting over 400 during it, too, so he's on the come up.
He's been strong as of late. Back to that point about Nola, though. Only 4 hits in 8 innings, and never mind 8 innings being rare, but to go that long and only give up 4 hits against the Red Sox just proves how dominant he was, and especially when you look at some of the names that he kept off the board for the Sox. The entire first half of the lineup, Betts, Benintendi, JD, Moreland, even Bogarts, none of them had hits. It was up to the bottom of the lineup to really pick up the slack and carry the team to the win. Just impressive performance from Nola, and then subsequently the bullpen, who had to back him up much in the way that our bullpen had Price. But like you mentioned, Blake Swihart came in that 13th inning after Eduardo Nunez had singled, and then he stole second base to put himself in scoring position. Brock Holt struck out, but Blake Swihart just came up swinging, and on the first pitch, hit a bomb out to right center. Ended up finding its way into the seats, not a home run, but as a ground rule double. And thank God Nunez stole second, because on a ground rule double, he was able to touch home, and the Red Sox were able to walk it off. And at that point, I believe it sent them 42 games over 500.
Right.
Which is just ridiculous.
It really is, and it's great to see the bottom of the order get something done, and because it's something we haven't seen all year. I mean, we've seen flashes of certain guys having big games, like Jackie Bradley caught fire for a little bit. We've seen obviously Swihart's caught fire for a little bit, and then Nunez lately has been hitting the ball very well. And then with the addition of Ian Kinsler, which I know we'll talk about a little bit more in a little bit, but he's been hot lately when he was with the Angels, and then now he's here. I don't remember off the top of my head how he did in his first game with the Red Sox, which was game 2 of this series, but
He got a hit. I know that. And he made a couple good defensive plays.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy that should help this team moving forward, especially with Pedroia out for the year. Dombrowski didn't confirm it, but he said that it's highly unlikely that we will see him play second base again this year for the Red Sox. So Kinsler definitely adds a little bit of depth at second base, and he's been red hot since the start of July. So we shouldn't be as concerned with the bottom of the order as we were a few weeks ago, even.
Yeah, they've been picking it up lately, and like you said, bringing in Kinsler should help. In fact, let's talk about that now that we've wrapped up talking about Game 1 of the series. Trade deadline obviously was Tuesday, and a lot of people were expecting the Red Sox to probably try to pick up a bullpen arm, considering the struggles that they've had, or a third baseman to help Devers kind of get adjusted where he's still so young. Instead, I think they shocked just about everybody and went and picked up the second baseman Ian Kinsler. Uh, what do you think was behind that decision, other than the Pedroia injury and just needing that little bit of extra depth?
I think that might actually have been it. I mean, they looked at Pedroia's injury and they viewed it as serious enough to the point where they couldn't really roll with Nunez and Holt at second base for the rest of the season. I think they also noticed that in the time that Devers has been out, that Eduardo Nunez is a lot better defensively when he's playing third. So what I think was the deal is they don't want Holt playing every day at second base. So they went out and they got a guy who's proven himself time and time again that he can perform. He can perform wherever in the lineup he is. He can hit for some power. He plays Gold Glove caliber defense, and his career average in the postseason is 291, and that's coming off of the last time he was in the playoffs where he had under 100. But it was in 3 games, but like that dropped his average pretty significantly. And he's been to the World Series twice. He's been in the postseason a lot with Texas, with Detroit. He's been there before. They want a guy that can provide some stability since Pedroia's out, and then they'll probably just platoon Devers and Nunez at third base for the rest of the season, and then kind of just roll with whoever's hotter come October and put them at third then. So I don't know how you feel about that, but
I think it is a smart move. Kinsler is a reliable name. Obviously, you mentioned his time with Texas in Detroit, and it's where he was really at his best. I would actually say, I would still say that Texas was probably his best stretch.
oh yeah, definitely. I mean, he was an all-star pretty much every year there.
Right, and I do kind of wish that if we were going to get Kinsler, um, obviously can't change that now, but I think it's a couple of years past when it would have been really awesome to get Kinsler, but still can be a reliable name. Obviously, he came in and did start second in the second game of the series. Had a pretty decent game, great defensive moves. I haven't really been paying much attention to him this year, so I don't really know how well he was playing with the Angels before he came over. But I was just definitely surprised that of all of the names that were available and all the things that the Red Sox were looking for, that they went and picked up a second baseman. Um, if they were gonna pick up a fielder, I was definitely expecting somebody at third. But if Kinsler can be that strong addition, and then like you said, we can put Nunez in there. We can have Holt play third a couple of times to back up Nunez, and of course he can back up uh, Kinsler at second. I do think it is a smart move. It's just one that took me by surprise.
Yeah, I mean, and that's basically been what has happened with every single move the Red Sox have made this year. Like, who knew the Red Sox wanted Steve Pearce? Who knew they wanted Nate Eovaldi? Who knew they wanted Ian Kinsler? Like, they were literally no rumors about any of those 3 guys, and the Sox wound up picking up all 3 of them. And then you look at, like, the guys that they were linked to, Kelvin Herrera, Jake Diekman, Brad Ziegler. They got none of them. It's weird.
Yeah, it was funny watching the game on Tuesday, and Jerry Remy actually pointed that exact thing out. You know, all the trades that we were told were going to happen didn't happen, and all the trades that nobody saw coming ended up being the ones that actually went down on Tuesday.
And sorry, go keep going.
No, you go ahead.
The only knock to the Kinsler deal is that they gave up probably their best and most major league ready reliever, and that's Ty Buttrey. He was one of the guys that got traded. I mean, he was the 21st, the 19th ranked prospect. I know they gave up 19 and 21 in their organization, but he's pitched very well down on the farm. So losing him kind of sucks especially when you look at the fact that they didn't add a bullpen arm to begin with. I don't know how they feel about Durbin Feltman, who's now in high A ball, but they've been saying that he might be up here in September because of how nasty he is. But seeing that they didn't get, yeah, right. Seeing that they didn't get a reliever, and then they gave up one of their best pitching relievers, or one of their best prospect relievers, to get Ian Kinsler is the only knock you could probably put on the deal. But if Kinsler balls out in the bullpen, and the guys that we've seen succeed in the past in that bullpen figure it out, it ultimately doesn't really matter.
Yeah, if we can get somebody from our farm system, that's baffling to me. That not so much baffling, but just amazing. Actually, is probably the better word. That somebody from Class A is being considered for the September call-ups.
Yeah, I mean, they were talking about how when he got drafted that he may just flat out start here or start in like Double A or Triple A because of how good he is and how promising he is as a pitcher. But I mean, we've seen it before, but I don't know.
So of course Tuesday was the trade deadline. Is there any trades from around the league that you want to give some spotlight to, or move on to the game that night?
I mean, we had basically a 10-minute stretch of just flat out excitement. I mean, Chris Archer got moved to the Pirates. Kevin Gausman got moved to the Braves, and Brian Dozier got moved to the Dodgers. Like, that all happened in a 10-minute stretch. I mean, we were seeing like minor deals here and there that I don't really think are worth mentioning, other than some of the guys the Sox were linked to, like Brad Ziegler got traded to Arizona. Keone Kelly was traded the night before to Pittsburgh too. But I think the only one really worth mentioning, because I wasn't a huge fan of the Dozier trade to begin with, but Chris Archer moving to Pittsburgh, like, that shocked me. I was doing another show. I was doing a deadline special with one of my coworkers at a website, and he goes, and he was like, the Pirates have emerged as a front runner for Chris Archer, and I literally had to look to see where the Pirates were ranked in the standings, because I was like, they can't be that good, and they're like 5.5 back of first place in the Central. So getting a guy like Archer is huge for them, because now they actually have a legit one on their roster in their rotation, and now the Rays with Snell on the DL have legitimately 0 starters on their depth chart. I checked it; it's hilarious.
Yeah, the Pirates were surging up the standings just before the All-Star break. Kind of cooled off now, just 6-4 in the last 10. But yeah, beforehand they were actually the hottest team going in that wasn't based in Boston. So they definitely could. It doesn't entirely surprise me that they got such a big name like that. It was also announced on Tuesday by the Red Sox that Chris Sale, as you alluded to earlier, is put on the 10-day DL, retroacted to July 28th, so that so he'll be missing as little time as possible. Was it left shoulder inflammation or
mild left shoulder inflammation? And I honestly don't think we should be remotely concerned, because they've been monitoring him all year. They have been making sure his pitch counts stay down, his innings have stayed down. If they're beating a team up, they'll like have him go 6, and then they'll just pull him regardless of performance. But I feel like we've seen his last few times out that he pitched a lot of stressful innings. Even the 4th inning against Minnesota, his last time out, he loaded the bases and then he wound up getting out of it. But those were a lot of stressful pitches he had to make, a lot of foul balls, a lot of close pitches not getting called strikes. I honestly just think this is a ploy to get him more rest. I mean, because like, you can't really just skip him in the rotation and people will be like, what are you doing? Because, right. But I think that this might just be a ploy to get him more rest, because when you heard him talk, he was like, I feel like I could pitch on Thursday night. It was just a little bit more fatigue than I'm used to after a start, but I feel fine. I could probably pitch through it. I know I'm not concerned. I know the medical staff isn't concerned, and I will be back as soon as I'm eligible to be activated. So I'm not remotely concerned. I mean, I was at first when I saw left shoulder inflammation, because they didn't downgrade it to mild until about 15 minutes after, and I had 4 heart attacks at that point. But I'm not concerned. it's just I feel like it's just a ploy to get him more rest, but it does make, I know we'll talk about it in the next show, but it does make David Price's next start that much more important, because now instead of Sale starting game 1 against the Yankees, it's Brian Johnson, and I get to watch that.
Yeah, Brian Johnson versus CC Sabathia. Ugh.
I mean, that could go one of two ways.
I
That
know who my money's on.
I think it could go one of two ways.
The timing is the only thing that is really concerning me, is just if this is a ploy to get him rest, or if it is something that he can work through and then you put him on the DL, why do it now when you have this Yankees series coming up that's probably one of the more important series, at least in this month, but possibly to the end of the year, probably one of the second or third most important series. So if you are trying to rest him, why wouldn't you wait a week and then pull this? That's the only thing that has me a little concerned, but where it is just inflammation and he's just on the 10-day, I'm not worried. I'm just a little confused.
I mean, you look at where the Yankees sit right now. They're 5 games back. The Red Sox still hold. I mean, I looked at the matchups, and in 3 of the 4, the Red Sox starting pitcher has the better ERA for the season. I mean, I know ERA doesn't tell the whole story, but I mean, like, Price doesn't even face Severino like he did in Sunday Night Baseball at New York.
That's Tanaka.
It's Tanaka. So I trust Price more in that game than I would trust Tanaka if I were a Yankees fan. But I think when it comes to Chris Sale, you'd rather catch it sooner rather than wait and see if it gets worse, because if it does get worse, then you're screwed. So in this case, you see he's like, oh, he got fatigued and was a little bit more sore after this outing than he normally is accustomed to. We'll just shut him down now. We'll give him 10 days to rest, and then we'll be smooth sailing from there. No pun intended. But yeah, I'd rather them catch it now and make him rest a little bit, even if it does mean swapping Brian Johnson in for 1 game, because I'd rather lose a game in August and then lose a game in October because you have to start like Rick Porcello or Nate Eovaldi in a game 2 because you have to start Price in game 1 because Sale's done for the year because he hurt his shoulder. And I know it's just inflammation, but I mean that could progress into something a lot worse.
Yeah, definitely. This does feel it does feel precautionary, but the timing of it and just being too careful right in front of a Yankee series is a bit worrying. But it does feel precautionary because they do have that cushion in the standings. So
as long as they don't get swept, it shouldn't be too bad, because I mean the Yankees have but the Yankees are missing Judge and Sanchez anyway. But as long as they don't get swept, the Red Sox should be in good shape. I mean, in the best case scenario or the worst case scenario that I think happens in the series, they just split it and they wind up walking away with a 5-game lead like they entered with it. So I don't know. I'm not concerned.
If you can get out of that series without losing a game, that's at this point in the season, that's basically a win. So let's finally move on here and talk about Game 2 of the series. It was a short series, so we had to come up with something to talk about. So, Game 2 saw Drew Pomeranz taking on Jake Arrieta, and, I don't want to jump too far ahead in this game, but I was watching some of the post-game stuff, and only the first few minutes, but they were grilling Pomeranz, and I actually thought he didn't look too bad in this game, considering it's just his second start back.
Yeah, I mean, he got hit around a pretty good amount, but that was early. He settled in. He only allowed the 2 earned runs. I know he only went 5. I know his pitch count was absurdly high. His velocity was even lower than it was in the Baltimore start. But, I mean, I think at this point, you kind of will take that. The 5 innings, 2 runs out of Drew Pomeranz, at this point, considering how bad he's been all year, you'll take it. And he put them in a good position to win. It just so happened that they were facing a former Cy Young Award winner in Jake Arrieta. And I know he was shaky at first. But let's not forget, the Red Sox had a lot of loud outs in that game. Like I didn't watch the end of the game but I was listening to it on the radio, and like I felt like every single ball that the Sox put in play, Joe Castiglione on WEI would be like, and there's a hot shot, and it hung up just too much, and it's caught in right center. And I'm like, okay, like you can't really get mad. I mean, those kind of things happen to teams regardless of how skilled their offense is. They will go through these stretches where they will be ice cold. They'll go through these stretches where they're just unlucky, like they were against Arrieta and the Phillies in general. And then they'll go through stretches where obviously they're tearing the cover off the ball and they'll put up 9 runs in back-to-back-to-back games, and they'll just blow teams out of the water. It just happened. It just so happened that they wound up losing to Jake Arrieta, who dazzled for 7 innings, and I think pitch count kept him from going even longer. But I mean, you face two guys like Nola and Arrieta, I think you can be pretty content with a split.
Yeah, this is definitely
especially when you beat Nola. You can kind of relax and be like, okay, Arrieta just pitched even better than Nola. So,
especially where our rotation kind of lined up. Obviously, we didn't have Sale. We went with Price and Pomeranz. So, a split in that situation is definitely all right. But yeah, back to talking about Pomeranz. Yeah, he only went 5, and he gave up quite a few walks, which was one thing, but only 2 runs. He had 3 strikeouts, only 4 hits, and then, of course, the 4 walks. But considering how he's been this year, I think that a lot of the criticism was kind of unearned in this start. Like, watching it, I wasn't that upset with Pomeranz's performance. I expected worse. I said during the preview for this that I didn't think that this was going to be the start where Pomeranz turned it around, but it did feel like this was a giant step towards turning it around and getting back to that. So I was very happy. The only thing was the pitch count, but if you go back and watch it, a lot of it is just him not being able to put guys away. His pitch count would have been in the low 80s, maybe even the high 70s after 5, and he could have gone 6. But there was so many 2-strike fouls and letting guys back into counts, and that is worth criticizing and grilling him for. But to say that this wasn't a decent, to say it wasn't a good outing, in my opinion, is just flat wrong. If you can go out there and give up 2 runs as a starting pitcher and go at least 5, I think you're doing your job.
It was his best start of the year, no question about that. So I mean, I know that's not saying much considering he didn't even get the win. He wound up losing the game. He gave up 2 runs and only went 5. He had 4 walks. I mean, there's a lot of things you can point your finger at and be like, yeah, I mean, like, but look how bad he was. He wasn't bad, and he wasn't that bad. And I think a lot of the criticism for Pomeranz after the game was just basically from being so used to blaming him after every single start. But you can't look and be like, oh, he shouldn't have given up any runs because the Red Sox scored 1 run, and the job of being a starting pitcher is to allow less runs than the opposition. And yes, that's true, but your team's got to bail you out. When you give up a couple runs, the odds of you winning when you only give up 2 runs from your starting pitcher are pretty damn high. Barring, like, he gave up 2 runs in the first inning and got hurt, and they had to go to their bullpen. But, like, you go at least 5 or 6 innings, you give up 2 runs, the odds of your team winning are pretty high. They just couldn't get it done. They had a lot of loud outs. I'm not overly concerned with Pomeranz after that start. You would still like to see the velocity go up, and I think a lot of the not being able to put guys away came from the fact that his velocity is so down. And I don't even know what it is. I don't know if he's just trying not to get hurt, if he's trying to limit himself from getting hurt, but I'm definitely more encouraged after that last start than discouraged with how I think he's going to be in the second half of the Red Sox. I mean, because that was probably his best opponent he's faced all year too, and he pitched probably his best outing of the year. I'd have to go back and look at the rest of the season, but I don't remember a time where he's pitched against a very good team and pitched well or at all. So.
Yeah, I thought it was a really strong start for him. The only thing is the walks, but
he always has been a guy that wants this.
I'd much rather a guy give up a bunch of walks than a bunch of hits. I mean, yeah, it's not good for command. You want to see a pitcher hit the zone, but I mean, a walk is only worth 1 base. So, but to that point, the scoring did kick off in the second for Philly, and they were able to take advantage of a walk with a hard hit double into left field that was able to drive a guy in. That made it 1-0. And then in my notes, I just had that Philly was working a lot of counts, and it did seem like every count was going to almost full. Um, but the Red Sox didn't really help them either. You didn't have Betts, no Pierce. Was Betts just a rest day? I missed some of the pregame stuff.
Yeah, it was just a rest day. It was a scheduled rest day. There's nothing. There's nothing to worry about with him. I think they wanted to make sure a couple of guys that they felt like they were going to need a lot during the Yankee series, especially with like Sabathia going in Game 1. They wanted to make sure they got a couple of days off in a row because I know Mookie's had success against Sabathia, and I know Pierce especially has had a lot of success against Sabathia in his career. So you want to make sure that they have a couple of rest days, and the fact it was a righty on the mound. I think that's a lot to do with why Pierce didn't play, but still, I think they just wanted to make sure that certain guys had a couple of days off in a row before the Yankee series.
Yeah, that's what I figured. But in the first inning, I forgot about this. There's a hard hit double or a hard hit ball out to left, and Benintendi went to field it, and he just fired in a laser, and it was a beautiful tag by Kinsler, who that was really his first action with the Sox right in the first inning. A great tag, just turned around, got him right in the back to save a double, and ended up helping Pomeranz get out of the first. So right away, Kinsler making an impact defensively. And the Red Sox kind of got to Arrieta in the second, but they weren't able to capitalize. And yeah, really a quiet day for the offense on Tuesday. The only out or the only run came on a Bogarts ground out. So not, you can attribute it to missing Mookie or missing Pierce, but or just being outpitched like they were in the first game. But the offense not really doing their job to back up Pomeranz in this start.
Yeah, it's a pretty boring series. Like in terms of
from an
offense,
standpoint, yeah.
I mean, there was the obvious excitement that comes with a walk-off. It was the 13th inning, so there wasn't even all the fans that were there to start the game weren't even there to watch it happen. But like, I mean, there was a little bit of excitement with the fact that Price dominated and the fact that Swihart walked it off. But other than that, there was really no reason. And the fact that Kinsler made his Red Sox debut, but there really wasn't anything to be like, oh, this series was worth playing. Like
the first game I would argue was exciting because it was such a great pitcher's duel.
I mean, but that's only exciting for people like us who actually enjoy watching pitchers pitch well. I mean, a lot of people are like, especially in a game that doesn't have as much offense anymore as it had in years past. I know the last couple of years there's been a lot more home runs, but I think offensively there's not been a lot of runs scored still. There's been a lot of strikeouts. You and I can still appreciate a low-scoring game where both pitchers go 7-8 innings and just flat out dominate. But I know a lot of people who would have found that game incredibly boring. But
I disagree that only a select few people enjoy it. I think if it's two strong pitchers going out there and doing what strong pitchers do, I think that's entertaining to quite a lot of people. If it was a couple of guys who were, fourth or fifth in the rotation going out there and going 7-8 innings, I don't think a lot of people are paying attention. But yeah, I enjoy Game 1, but Game 2 definitely was kind of a snooze.
Yeah, especially considering when you look at the score and you're like, oh, there's probably another great pitcher's duel, but Pomeranz only went 5.
Yeah. And
then, I mean, I don't even think you can even make any comments about the Red Sox bullpen. I mean, they gave up a run in the 9th inning. I mean, after however many innings in a row of not allowing a run, I mean, the Phillies got a couple of good swings on Velasquez, I believe it was, in the 9th, and they got a run out of it. So I don't think you can really put any blame on the bullpen. I mean, granted, they didn't put them in the best position possible to come back in the 9th inning, obviously, because they gave up a run. But I mean, there's really nothing in the series other than the fact that because I don't even know if you can blame the offense, because I mean they faced 2 elite caliber pitchers. So it's not like in the Twin series where we could get on them for only getting the 1 run against Kyle Gibson, only getting 2 off of Lynn, only getting 3 off of Barrios. I mean, they got 1 run against Aaron Nola, who's a Cy Young candidate, and then Jake Arrieta, who won a Cy Young a few years ago.
Yeah, so some points to take away from this series are Price finally getting that ERA back under 4. He sits at a 3.97 right now, and Pomeranz, courtesy of his two, only giving up 2 runs and going 5 innings, has dropped his from a 691 to a 656. So it's a slow climb back down the ladder for Pomeranz, but at least it's moving in that direction rather than creeping up back towards 7. So
Yeah, well, like I said before, or when we did our preview of the Phillies series, that you can basically scrap everything that happened before the start 2 nights ago and be like, okay, so if Pomeranz can give you this the rest of the year, you can be happy with his performance. Because when someone's been that bad for you for the year, but he continues to get rolled out there, you basically just have to scrap what happened before and just be like, okay, so from this point on, if he can be a guy that gives you 5-6 innings a start, 3 or less runs a start, you are more than happy with that. If his ERA from 2 nights ago to the end of the year, just that stretch is maybe 4, maybe like 3.75 to 4.2, something in that range, you can be content with it and be like, all right, he wasn't that bad for us, because when we needed him to perform the most, he pitched at his highest level of the season.
yeah, that's definitely something that well, I don't know if we necessarily need it from him because we can just move him back to the bullpen with everybody that we have now, but it would be nice to see it. But that does wrap up our review of the Philadelphia Phillies at Boston Red Sox series. Just a 2-game series, both teams able to escape with a win. Great battle of 2 division leaders, and we're going to join you very soon with the preview of a 4-game series between the Boston Red Sox and the rival New York Yankees. One of the most important series of the year, and the Red Sox are going to have to go without Chris Sale for it.
Yeah.
If you like what we do, you and George, you want to say something before I start plugging stuff?
No, I thought you were waiting for me to talk because there was like a little bit of a pause, so I was just like, yeah, just throwing in a little bit.
If you do like this podcast, you can like us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/2manADV. You already know where to find us on your favorite podcast provider, but you might not know that we're now on Google Play and iTunes. Just go to Google Play and iTunes and just type in 2-Man Advantage and look for the logo that is on the Facebook page, on the Podbean page, anywhere. So we are now available on both iTunes and Google Play. So if you don't want to get a third-party podcast provider, you can find us there. YouTube.com/2manADV, I think. If not, it's just 2-Man Advantage.
I mean, I typed in 2-Man Advantage on YouTube, and we popped up after I scrolled like past a few videos, but so I think we're good.
So we are there. It's just this podcast. It's not anything. It's not any video. It's just us speaking on top of just a still image of the Red Sox logo. But if you'd rather go on YouTube rather than keep coming to a podcast provider, we are there for you. And if you really enjoy what we do and you want to help us make it better and do it more often, which I think we would both love to do, you can go support us on patreon.com/2manADV. If you can pledge any amount that you can afford, we'd really appreciate it, and you'd be helping us make great content. And we've got some rewards for you if you pledge certain amounts to us. Patreon is completely safe. Like I've said before, I use it. I think it's great. It's safe. It's a good way to support people who you think do a great job and whose content you enjoy and want to hear more of and whatnot. But we're about to go record our next episode, the preview of that Yankee series. So until you listen to that, I've been Dylan, that's been Jordan, and we'll catch you guys soon.
Peace out, guys.